Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Off the Dome Sports Podcast, your favorite sports podcast where two sports lovers sit on this couch and give their hot takes. Off the Dome. We are the boys on Bright Side. I am Redfish.
And I am Mustang.
And we are the ones steering this ship today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in on YouTube, Off the Dome Sports Podcast.
Also on Twitch.
Also on Twitch at OTD Sports. If you're watching, it means you probably follow us on Facebook. Make sure to keep up with us on there. That is the best way to keep up with the Off the Dome boys. Follow us on Twitter as well, _Dome Pod. And don't forget, you can always come back and watch these if you miss them. On YouTube, Off the Dome Sports Podcast. On Twitch at OTD Sports. We're happy to be here, happy to be alive, and happy to be talking about the NFL Draft. Passed by us just last week, and it was an exciting one.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, hanging out with the boys, watching the draft, reacting to it. Some picks that were a surprise, and there were some picks that weren't a surprise.
Yeah, I think we definitely had some surprise picks in there. And we're going to talk about, some surprise picks, some unsurprising picks, some good picks, some bad picks. Just picks and picks. You know what I mean?
Picks on picks.
So, what we're going to do today is we're each going to give 3 winners of the NFL Draft, in our opinion. 3 losers of the NFL Draft, in our opinion. And, of course, we'll talk about the New Orleans Saints because that is our team. But first, we're going to start off with, league-wide stuff. Who do we think was a winner? Who do we think was a loser? So I'll start us off. If you wouldn't mind helping me out on that screen right there.
For sure.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to start off with my first winner of the NFL Draft, and that is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. I think day one was wow, I cannot speak. Easily. The best day one of the NFL Draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. They become the Philly Dogs after drafting Jalen Carter, who slipped a little bit due to the character issues that they saw throughout the process with the whole racing thing, and very tragic situation for sure. So I don't want to make light of it, but that's kind of why Jalen Carter fell. And then you see Nolan Smith go at 30, which to me was a surprise. I thought for sure Nolan Smith was a top 12 guy, top 15 without a doubt, because of all of the athletic potential that he has.
Sound man.
Oh, sound man! How much reverb you have on? Apparently too much. Where's my reverb at? We're trying our best here.
Yeah.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
I don't even see reverb on here.
Is there an echo? I'm assuming there's an echo of some sort. And that's why he's saying the reverb.
Yeah. All the way in the right. FX to main.
FX to main, he says. This is par for the course with us. Just figuring out things as we go along.
What about now?
Is that better? I'll get back to talking about the Eagles, and we'll figure out how it sounds. So, yeah, Philadelphia Eagles, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter. That's a fantastic round one, in my opinion. You get 2 defenders from the national champion, Georgia Bulldogs. Can't complain about that whatsoever, and especially getting good value of them at 9 and at 30. Moving on to the second round, back-to-back picks. They had Alabama guard Tyler Steen. I think he played tackle in college. Going to play guard at the next level, so he has that inside-outside versatility. The Eagles' O-line is one that's definitely getting older, so it's good to see them draft the need there. Soundman says we are better. Good to know. Thank you, Soundman. I appreciate all of your help, as always. But like I was saying, Tyler Steen, inside-outside versatility. I think he's going to be a really good player at the next level, especially when he has time to learn behind guys like Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey for that inside bit. Jordan Mailata also still there. So they still have a really good O-line, top 8 for sure. But, just bringing in more depth, guys to fill in needs. Left guard's a big need for them right now. Right guard, they could use some help. And then also just, bringing a new guy into the room. They also drafted two DBs back-to-back at picks 66, 105, Keely Ringo and Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown's kind of like a nickel guy who played safety at Illinois. He can play deep. He can play in the slot. Good versatile guy there. Keely Ringo is all about athleticism. Like I think he's built how you want a corner to be built. He's got the speed. He's got the playmaking ability. The questions for him is, does he have the technique to actually maintain the NFL level? You could see multiple times on the college level where he got burnt by good receivers. So although he's built like a football player and he has the athleticism of a football player, can he actually come down to the technique and, capitalize on having such good athleticism? But taking him in the 4th round, it's not like you're investing a ton into him. And then their last 2 picks, quarterback Tanner McKee. The Eagles are always a team that's going to invest in quarterback. Even if you've got a star, you're going to take one to sit. They did it with Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts ends up becoming the highest paid player in NFL history for a couple days before Lamar got that new contract. So we know how that goes. And then a guy who me and Reese loved going into this draft, Texas D tackle Moro Ajomo. Very talented guy. I was expecting him to go somewhere in the 4th to the 5th, and he ends up going at 249 in the 7th. So for me, Eagles are the biggest winner of the draft. If I had to give their draft a grade, I'd go A++. I loved all the players they picked, and I think they not only filled needs, but filled potential as well. Once Soundman Jr. over here figures out what we're looking at as far as making the sound better goes, he's going to give his first winner. Does it sound better, Soundman? Keep us updated. Good.
Nice.
Perfect. All right. Soundman Jr., Mustang, some would say. Why don't you go ahead and give us your first winner of this NFL draft? And you know what? Why don't you go ahead and make it possible for these people to see what we're looking at here?
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
With the quick power of editing, of course.
Let me just scroll. And there it was.
Bing, bang.
Bing, bang,
pop.
boom. Then, yeah, for sure I can bring this into the pane.
Here we go. And with the power of editing.
Nope, not yet. Hold on. There we go.
And with the... Nope,
wrong one.
Hold up. We're almost there.
Editing's almost there.
We're almost there. And with the power of editing...
There we go.
There it is. Green Bay Packers. Give us your thoughts on the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I thought they had a really good draft for the first time in a long time, actually. Felt like they recognized their needs. Yeah, the comments are really slow. They tend to show up a good chunk of time afterwards.
Let me tell people they need to start commenting. How about that?
So yeah, the Packers. I feel like this year they looked at what they needed with what was available, and took what was needed, what was a team need, and this year was the receiving room, tight ends and receivers, and they got some of those. Really liked the Luke Musgrave pick, as well as Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State. 2 tight ends who play, similar ball, because, most tight ends will play similar roles on teams in the NFL, but they still have their differences. I really like the pick after, losing Bobby Tan. And I feel like the first time in a while they drafted some offensive weapons for Rodgers when Rodgers is no longer there.
Makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
I also really love the Lucas Van Ness pick. I think he's going to have a very, very successful NFL career. And why not a Packer,
Yeah, no, he feels like a Packer.
Next Clay Matthews, maybe.
Wow. I mean, possible.
Yeah.
I like Lucas Van Ness. Has that inside-outside versatility, too. As J.J. Watt said on the Pat McAfee show last week, every time a white Big Ten edge rusher comes out in the draft, they're going to compare him to him. So J.J. Watt was like, yeah, sure. I bet Lucas Van Ness will be the next J.J. Watt too. Even though people literally made that comparison. But yeah, I like the Packers draft too.
I mean, it's hard not to have a halfway decent draft when you have that many picks.
13 picks, yeah. I mean, they had tons of picks, and they ended up drafting 3 receivers and 2 tight ends. So you've got some offensive weapons to work with. You got Lucas Van Ness coming off the edge. Carl Brooks went a lot later than I was expecting. DT out of Bowling Green, out of a small school, so he doesn't get the love he deserves. But I think he was a really good player on tape. Yeah, I like their draft too. I'm with you.
Yeah, as far as getting what the team needs, they did that. I feel, and then even helping that defense go. They were good last year, making them even better. I think with the Lucas Van Ness and the D tackles like out of Auburn, Colby Wooden, and as you mentioned, Carl Brooks. I think it's just going to help that team succeed even more. Give Jordan Love all the help he needs because I think he's going to need a lot of it.
Yeah, and even the Packers are kind of admitting that. I know they gave him a 1-year extension today, but it's worth less than the 5th-year option would have been. And they said in a press conference, they were like, yeah, we're not giving him a 5th-year option because we don't know what he can do. He started a couple games for us, and in those couple games, he wasn't great. So we're not, we're committing to him as a starter this season, but we don't want to say anything after. So at least the Packers are being transparent for one time in their franchise history. Moving on to my next winner, I've got the Seattle Seahawks as a winner. I think their first round was fantastic as well, kind of up there with the Eagles. The Seahawks are going to be down. It goes in alphabetical by team name or city name. So Seattle Seahawks, I have them as a winner. I think they had a fantastic draft. Like I said with the Eagles, first round was great. You go number 5, you get Devin Witherspoon. Him and Sauce Gardner are going to be one of the best corner duos in the entire NFC, maybe the entire NFL in my opinion. Witherspoon's a fantastic, perfect size, plays super physical. He was definitely worth a number 5 overall pick to me. And then you get JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba at number 20 overall. A little bit lower than people were expecting him to go, but he's a great fit for that Seattle offense. You have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf who can play on the outside. JSN is your stereotypical perfect slot wide receiver. Not super fast, but really quick on his feet. Has great route running ability. I wouldn't go as far as to call him elite as somebody did when we were here for our mock draft episode and draft watch along, but I really like JSN. I think he was the best receiver in this class. And then you look at their later rounds. Derek Hall out of Auburn, a little bit higher than I was expecting him to go, but he has the potential to be really good. Anthony Bradford out of LSU, we know that he's a solid guard. He's not flashy. He's not going to be Quentin Nelson by any means, but it'll hold up for you.
Yeah,
and
he's going to get the job done.
Yeah, and the Seahawks love LSU O-linemen.
Pocic.
Ethan Pocic was their center for a long time, and Damian Lewis is their current right guard, so they'll slide in probably Anthony Bradford at left, and you'll have LSU guards as your interior O-line. And then a guy that I know you and me both loved coming into this draft, and they pick him at 52, Zach Charbonnet. What a pick for behind Ken Walker. That's beautiful. You let Ken Walker, handle most of the work, and he will be there on receiving downs. He'll be there when the going gets tough. But Zach Charbonnet is a perfect guy to just take a few carries away from him. Let him take a few breathers. If you need some goal line work, get Zach down there. If Kenneth Walker's been grinding away on the drive, so I love what the Seahawks did. I think that round 1 was fantastic. They're the only ones for me that compete with the Eagles as far as a first round goes. But then they still did more to kind of get some really good depth for a team that surprisingly made the playoffs last year, and they got better.
Yeah.
So for me, we're going to do an episode probably pretty soon where we go way too early NFL predictions for this next season.
I got some
breaking
things
down
to say about this running back.
Yeah, breaking down, what could happen, who we could see winning that's not supposed to, who we could see losing that is supposed to win. And the Seahawks for me are a team that could definitely have potential to go far.
Yeah, and from what I remember, ever since Lynch was a Seahawk, I feel like they've always had, a double-headed dragon in the backfield. They had Chris Carson right after Lynch, and they had some other guys like Travis Homer and DJ Dallas, but then it became Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. Yep. Then after a few years, it became Rashad Penny and Ken Walker for last year.
Yep.
Now I think they have their future set with Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Even running back out of Georgia, Kenny McIntosh there at the bottom, their last pick.
If he doesn't trip and fall at the goal line in that national championship game or in the Ohio State game, he probably goes a whole round earlier. I think that killed him for people.
But yeah, that's just the definition of a double-headed dragon, in my opinion. Two great running backs. I mean, they do play kind of similar, but on a team like this, they could fill so many roles. It's
Absolutely.
crazy.
Yeah, with this kind of offense, with what Geno Smith could do, with picking up JSN and focusing more on the passing game, now you can really run the ball too. I think it's going to be a really good team next year. Moving on to your next winner, you had, you know who it was. My team.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. See, listen, I didn't even have to bring them up because you did it for me.
They had a really good draft.
They did. And after night one, not a statement I thought anyone would say.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Detroit Lions.
Go Lions, baby.
They definitely had a questionable first round. I feel like if they had this exact draft but moved some of the pieces around in the rounds, it's not even a question.
Yeah.
Like, they gave them a C- in round one because they took Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell,
who were both kind of like round two guys.
Yeah, if you switch up, so say you take Brian Branch at pick 12 and then Jahmyr Gibbs at 18.
And then you move down.
Yeah.
You move down Sam Laporta, you move down Jack Campbell to those respective picks, and then it's like, holy crap, A+.
Yeah.
It's just where they took them that people are confused about.
Yeah, I think the amount of talent they took with these picks is unreal. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be crazy good in Detroit, especially since they moved their game out a little bit, sent Swift to the Eagles. So now it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, another two-headed dragon in the backfield. But this time, it is two very different backs. You got David Montgomery, who's going to pound the rock over and over again. Then you got Jahmyr Gibbs, who could step in for a screen for an outside run and just get him like 20 yards on an average day.
Jahmyr Gibbs is a super dynamic player. I love him.
And then I know Soundman's stoked about Jack Campbell being in the NFL now.
As he should be.
Love Jack Campbell. He's going to be one of those linebackers where, Lionel Frankenstein compared him. He said it was a slight comparison to Luke Kuechly, and I think it can be more than that. Like right now, yeah, but give him a few years, and I think he'll be a captain of a defense and a pretty damn good one too.
Yeah. Very
similar to Luke Kuechly, to where he's the definition of a captain, right? He steps in, he leads the team, and he
DeMario Davis-esque.
Yes. He's not going to be the flashiest player, but he's going to be the brains of the operation. And then taking Iowa players back to back with Sam Laporta. There was so much tight end talent in this draft that I feel like it's hard to miss. And Sam Laporta is one of those where I don't want to say he's underrated because he still went pretty high for a tight end. But compared to the Michael Mayer, the Dalton Kincaid, he wasn't in those talks with them. And I feel like he should have been.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Lottober absolutely loved him. You know that. And, he was excited for my loins to get him for sure. But he ended up going over Michael Mayer and Luke Musgrave in the draft, and that's something a lot of people question. They're literally questioning on this website here. But for me, Sam Laporta comes from a place where he's going to produce. Iowa tight ends, it's the best tight end school right now. They have George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson, and Noah Fant to prove it. Like 3 starting tight ends in the NFL, and now you've got a 4th one. I think, for me, Sam Laporta was the most well-rounded tight end. I think, Luke Musgrave and Dalton Kincaid were fantastic receivers. Michael Mayer is a receiver and a blocker, but Sam Laporta, I think, does both about the same, and that's what you want from a tight end, is that like that ability to do both.
Yeah.
Reminds me of George Kittle.
Very fair. And then these next two picks, which I think are the steals of the draft, you got Brian Branch, DB out of Bama, was predicted to go in the first round, fell all the way to pick 45.
Insane in my brain.
A lot of teams were scared of the whole nickel corner thing, but in the NFL right now, that is a valued position. I think that, game time comes, you want that nickel corner to be all over the field and to really help out that secondary. And we saw that with C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the Saints. Saw it with him on the Eagles.
He's on the Lions
And
now
he's
too.
a Lion.
So it's kind of an interesting fit for Brian Branch and CJ, but I think you can put either one back at safety and have the other one play the nickel, and then switch them out at any point depending on who they're lining up against, and they'll both play well.
Yeah, so I'm excited for Brian Branch to play, which I don't say much about people from Bama,
I would love not to.
but he is one of those where
You can't help but
Yeah,
think he's a really good player.
he gets you going.
Yeah. Lions Day 2 was one of the best days of
And
the
then
draft
a
I've ever
man
seen.
who was predicted to go early second round, around the 40s.
He was getting first round talks the day before. There was people saying he wasn't slipping past 25. Like, I was like, geez, like, seriously?
Yeah. Obviously,
He ended up.
we are speaking of Hendon Hooker,
Yes.
quarterback out of Tennessee. That whole Tennessee offense, I felt like
Everybody got drafted.
If this draft wasn't so loaded, so deep, they all would have went in the first round.
Yeah, and maybe not first round, but like even still, they got drafted, like all of them. Like if CJ Stroud and Bryce Young weren't in this class, Hendon Hooker is probably the safe pick to be the first one. I know he ends up being like the fifth quarterback off the board, but with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud being there, it's Hendon Hooker's probably the safest pick. So he'll end up going round one. Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt, two really, really good receivers who I think ended up going back-to-back in the draft. They're really good, both of them.
Yes, very good.
Darnell Wright went 10. Like, the Tennessee's offense produced some guys this draft.
Yeah, it's a great look, unless you're Tennessee. Then you're kind of like,
And then you're like, oh,
what the hell do we do now?
They got Joe Milton at quarterback next year. He's supposed to be a top 10 quarterback in college football, but
yeah,
I don't know who he's throwing to.
Looking forward to these Lions coming out and trying to win the division this year.
Not trying to. They're winning the division. I would put my life savings on it.
Okay. Who do you think is, the runner-up if the Lions
The
win?
Vikings. It's the Lions and the Vikings division. They're fighting for it. I think the Packers will probably end up last. I don't think Jordan Love is him at all. I think he's kind of not great. And then you'll have the Bears finish third with about 6 to 7 wins. Moving on to my last winner, a team that has made the AFC Championship 2 years in a row, and a team that has my boy. His head's cut off in this picture, but you know who he is. Big Joey B, the Cincinnati Bengals. Miles Murphy at 28. The Bengals were in a position where they could kind of just go best player available, because they do have some needs for sure. Like, I think their defense could definitely use depth. In the secondary, they needed some starters.
Yeah, I think they drafted really smart here because they got their needs, but they didn't reach to get their needs.
Exactly. Miles Murphy was not only, in my opinion, the best player available at 28. I was really hoping he'd fall to 29 and the Saints would go for him. But Miles Murphy, best player available at 28, and he helps you on defense immediately. Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson need to have a guy behind them. You can't have the same two edge rushers the entire game. We've learned that from teams like the Eagles, who have the best D-line in football.
We have 7 of them.
And it doesn't matter who's on the field, they're getting to the quarterback. So if it works for another team, why not work for you? Miles Murphy was a great pick for me. DJ Turner, Turner the burner. Like, dude ran a 4.32 at the combine. Absolutely super speed.
They drafted some speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Super aggressive as well. In college, I think he had a pick against C.J. Stroud in the big game between Michigan and Ohio State. So he showed he has some ball hawking ability. And for me, he's a guy who can play outside or he can play off zone. So I think that's really important, especially in a Bengals defense run by Lou Aranamu. I don't know how to say his last name. He's really Italian. Lou Aranamu, maybe. I don't know. But he's a really good DC. And they ask a lot from their corners. That's why Eli Apple stinks. So DJ Turner can come in and fill that role. And then in the later rounds, they picked 3 straight guys who I think are fantastic players: and Jordan Battle, Charlie Jones, and Chase Brown. Jordan Battle played safety opposite of Brian Branch at Alabama. More of a physical guy than Brian Branch, less coverage guy, more in the box, hit you in the backfield,
more front help,
more Jamal Adams-esque.
That's
kind of who I thought about when I saw Jordan Battle. Was a better ball hawk version of Jamal. I'm terrible at speaking
he's
right now.
kind of like, you take those hard hitting safeties, like you got Ed Reed, Palomalu, Jamal Adams, and you kind of give them a little speed and a little bit of coverage knowledge.
I'm not trying to compare Jordan Battle to Ed Reed, but now that you say the name, it's kind of like play style wise, it makes
very
sense.
Similar play style.
Good comp there, like that. Purdue wide receiver Charlie Jones. Gotta love the Caucasian receivers. Somebody on YouTube,
they were giving him some.
Somebody on YouTube called him Cooper Kupp 2.0.
He's gonna have to prove a little to be that.
Yeah, definitely. But he had a really good year with Aiden O'Connell at Purdue. They ended up going to the Big Ten championship, and he showed up on the biggest stages. I think he could be a solid contributor at the next level. With Tyler Boyd's getting up there in age, so
bring in some.
He can step in at receiver 3. He can play that receiver 4 position, because when you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, it's kind of hard to move up. But you got to have rotational pieces.
They've had the other Michael Thomas there for a few years now.
The other Mike Thomas. They've got Trent Irwin as well, kind of a shorter Wes Welker-esque guy. And then running back Chase Brown. Joe Mixon said supposedly he's not in the plans for the Bengals this upcoming season, so he'll either get cut or traded, which means Chase Brown will probably step in and immediately be the running back 2 behind Samaje Perine, and then Captain America Chris Evans is in there too. So their running back room's kind of strange.
Yeah, I don't.
If Joe Mixon really isn't in the conversation, maybe this would have been a team that looked for one of those higher end running backs in round 2, I guess. But I don't know what to think of the Joe Mixon situation.
Yeah, I think I know that they said that he's not in their plans for the future, but I don't see how that could possibly mean this upcoming season. I mean, if they say that, they kind of have to get a running back earlier than that. Yeah, I like Chase Brown. I think he can be a pretty good talent in the NFL, especially like coming off the bench, being a third down guy, getting you that first down when the running back's tired. But I don't see him as a starting running back, especially not day one.
Yeah, it's weird. So to me, this means either Joe Mixon will be in the plans, or the Bengals have another plan to get a starting caliber running back. I know another guy who was out there that's being got some trade talks going around is Dalvin Cook. So you can only imagine if the Bengals secure that. I'm just going to mention that here in case it happens, and I sound smart. And then one of your favorite players in the draft is the last guy I'll talk about here with the Bengals, and Andre Yoshivas.
Ivy League
speed is the way to describe him. Very, very fast. I'm pretty sure he's pretty tall as well, if I remember correctly.
About 6'3".
Yeah, and then he went to Princeton, so he's got a brain on him.
Yeah, he didn't have the competition to be looked at as one of the big guys at receiver because playing in the Ivy League, but he definitely made some noise. I mean, even for an Ivy League player to be drafted at all is kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to an Ivy League school, you're not going to play football. You're going to get an education, and you're playing football while you're there. But we've had some successful guys come out of Ivy League schools. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard.
Jeremy Lin went to.
Jeremy Lin went to Harvard.
Yeah.
He's definitely a basketball player, but also athlete.
Yeah. Mathlete.
Daniel Jones went to Duke. I can't think of anybody else from a Ivy League school. But we've seen it happen before. So yeah, I just really like this Bengals draft. I think, just like I said with the Eagles and the Seahawks, not only did they address needs, but they got really good players to fill those needs. So why don't you move on to your third winner here, and then we'll get into losers a little bit quicker than we did the winners, because we want to talk more positive than negative around here. So go ahead and give us your third winner. We'll get into some losers, and then we'll talk about the Saints.
it her? Did I pass it up?
Yeah, you had to have. I think you passed it up again.
Had to have, right?
I think you passed it up again. Like, go down. Yeah, they're under the N. You're almost there. You're almost there. There it is.
There it is.
There he is.
The New York Giants.
The New York Football Giants.
Not the
New York Baseball
the
Giants.
Dallas Football Cowboys.
Also not that. No, not even a little bit.
So looking at this team, there's a lot of needs for the Giants. So you can't really say that they went out and got needs because they need everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're kind of one of those weird teams where they made the playoffs, but they could improve at, almost every position, except for maybe two.
Yeah, so going out and getting Deontay Banks in the first, I felt like it was a good move, kind of played it safe. He was the best DB available at the time, even after Christian Gonzalez fell, which I'll get to that when we get to the losers. But yeah, I think he's going to be a solid cornerback in the NFL. He could potentially turn into a number one option where he's always going to be on that number one guy, man to man. He's got that potential. He's got that speed. He's got that physicality. And moving on to John Michael Schmitz here. You can always draft interior O-line.
Yeah, and they don't have a center right now, so now they do.
Now they do. And a pretty good one at that. He was looked at by pretty much every team because every team needs interior O-line. No matter who you are, one off the bench will always help, especially a guy like this who could play any position on the interior, whether it be left guard, right guard, or center. Sponsored sip by Mountain Dew. And then probably my favorite pick by them in Jalen Hyatt.
Great pick.
We've seen that Giants receiving core go from outstanding, Victor Cruz, Odell Beckham, and Sterling Shepard to garbage.
They also had Mario Manningham,
David Tyree,
Hakeem Nicks.
Some great names on
Great
the
names.
Giants
Great
receiving
names for
core.
the Giant receiving core.
And then we had Kenny Galladay.
Ugh. Had one touchdown in 3 seasons or something.
So yeah, I think getting Jalen Hyatt not only will improve your team, but will send a message to your fans and your quarterback saying, "Look, we realize we haven't been the best at this particular part of the game. We're working on it."
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think they were in a position at one to get one of the receivers out there. I don't even know who was still I know they had a receiving run.
The problem with them at 24 was they traded up to get Deontay Banks, and the 4 first-round receivers went 20, 21, 22, 23. They had 4 straight receivers taken.
Yeah, so I think what they wanted to
hit
do
right after it.
Yeah, I think what they wanted to do was try and get in one of those guys, and then that happens. But
you get Deontay Banks, who was the best DB available, and you needed a corner, so it worked out.
Yeah, and then they knew they could wait on Jalen Hyatt, so they didn't need to draft him at 57. Get someone who is going to be there, going to be good, going to produce, John Michael Schmitz. And then you could wait on Jalen Hyatt like that. He's going to be a good player in the NFL. He's got that speed. He's got great hands. Going to be tough to cover, and once he gets that, first steps in the NFL under his feet, he's going to be one of the guys.
Yeah, and then the last pick, I guess, for the Giants that's really relevant is Eric Gray. With the whole Saquon situation, he's playing on the franchise tag, and then their backup is Matt Breida, who isn't great. Eric Gray was a really good receiving back out of Oklahoma, so he's gonna bring a good complement to the third down back style for the New York Giants. So
yeah, definitely gonna help out that run game, being that Saquon can't carry the ball every down.
No, unfortunately for the Giants, he cannot do
That's
that.
basically what he did last season.
Yeah, you can't turn Saquon into Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's built like an outside linebacker.
Built like a
Saquon's
freight
built
train.
like a running back. He might have the biggest quads known to man, but that doesn't mean he doesn't get hurt.
As we've seen.
Multiple times. But yeah, out of our 6 teams, I would consider them all winners. I don't disagree with any of your picks. I think they're, if I had to leave off my 3 teams, at least 2 of your 3 teams would make mine. So I think we did a really good job of looking at who won this draft immediately. You can't say who won the draft for another 5 years, really, because that's when players will see who they really are.
Like we've seen with the Pelicans and the Lakers.
Yeah, and Like the Saints 2017 draft, I can't go look back at what people gave him then, but I don't know if it was all A pluses. It ended up being an A plus in real life. Like 4 out of the 6 guys ended up making Pro Bowls. So that was a fantastic draft. And then you have drafts that look amazing and then end up being terrible. So we'll really see in a couple of years, but as of right now, that's who I think are the winners. Let's move on to the losers. We'll be a little bit quicker with these, just so we're not as negative and we can get to the Saints. So my first loser is also one of your losers. In my opinion, they had the worst draft in the NFL this year. I liked one pick. They're the last one. Yep. I liked legit one pick that they had, and it was KJ Henry. But other than that, I think the Washington Commanders, like, they just missed for me. Like So I know you were going to bring this up, so I'll bring it up and we can both talk about it. They skipped over Christian Gonzalez to get Emmanuel Forbes.
Yeah, I know Emmanuel Forbes was looked at as first-round talent. I personally didn't see it. I think he's undersized. He's got the speed, but
he's super fast and he's super tall, but like he's 166 pounds.
Yeah, he cannot play any press coverage. He's going to get shoved to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And he had production as far as like pick sixes and stuff like that go. I think he had 2 just last season. So he plays the ball well, but size is if size is a concern at the quarterback position, it's probably a concern at the cornerback position too.
Very close.
Yeah, they're just a couple letters different. So Emmanuel Forbes, I don't think he's a bad player.
No.
I think, any other draft, he probably goes in the first or second round too. But when Christian Gonzalez is on the board, Christian Gonzalez is your prototypical corner. Like, if you Google cornerback, Christian Gonzalez comes up. Like, it's that serious to me. So I think that was just a bad pick as far as that goes. I would have picked Christian Gonzalez there. Jartavius Martin, sure.
I think they panicked. They realized they messed up by drafting Forbes and was trying to make up for it.
Him and Sidney Joseph were a pretty good safety duo at Illinois, but it's Illinois. Like, who did they really play that passes the ball a ton? They played in the Big Ten, where the only team that really passes the ball is Ohio State. So we'll see what the level of competition does there. They end up taking Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas, who I told Reese when I saw he got drafted, I swear that man is 37. Like, I think I've seen the name Ricky Stromberg at Arkansas for legit 10 years. Don't know how he was still young enough to get drafted. I did like KJ Henry. I think KJ Henry is a well-sized defensive end. He can play, kind of like either that 3-tech or the 4-eye. He'll play. I wouldn't kick him all the way outside.
Yeah, I think he was kind of overshadowed by a great
Brian Brzee,
Clemson
Miles
D-line.
Murphy. Yeah. I think he's still a good player, and he'll probably end up picking up some snaps with, Chase Young's 5th-year option getting declined. So they'll try
That's
out
gonna
some
be
other
interesting.
guys. Yeah, he's going to have a amazing year to get a good contract from either the Commanders or another team. But other than that, I just, nothing sticks out as good to me. It just feels blech.
Yeah, looking at these names, there's really, outside of Emmanuel Forbes, there's none of these guys are guys that I really looked at when I was looking at the draft.
Yeah. Moving on to my next loser, I've got the Dallas Cowboys. Mozzie Smith in the first round is just it felt chalk.
Yeah,
that's not a problem.
He is a Cowboy.
Yeah, it's not a negative that you go chalk. Some teams go chalk and it's a great pick, but for me it didn't stand out. I think he's going to be a decent player. He's a good run stopper, but nothing after that excited me either. Like I said with the Commanders, I only had one pick that I like from this team too, and that's Deuce Vaughn all the way at the end of the draft. And the real reason I like that pick is because his dad works for the Cowboys, and there was a super emotional bit
I saw that.
where his dad got to call him and tell him he was getting drafted. And he asked him, would you like to come to work with me next week? That was super cool. And I think Deuce Vaughn's a really good player. It's kind of hard not to compare him to Darren Sproles when he's a super small running back out of Kansas State. But
yeah, I like the Mozzie Smith pick for Dallas. It was a need they needed, and I think he'll step in immediately and be one of the guys that'll help bolster that defense. I also like DeMarvion Overshown out of Texas.
Just a good name.
It is a really good name, but when you have Micah Parson there, he's gonna need to to step into some pretty big shoes and be one of the guys that can, help spread the defense out. And I think that he was probably the best option for them to get there to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike it as much as I dislike the Commanders draft, but for me, again, it's kind of one of those drafts where nothing stands out. I don't think they got any outstanding value or a really good player that's going to make a difference. It's all just kind of we'll see how it goes type thing. Luke Schoonmaker's not a terrible player, but he's nothing compared to Dalton Schultz or any of the other tight ends in this draft.
He's not going to give you that production. He's definitely more of a blocking tight end.
Yeah, definitely.
That you put in the red zone and put on the edge to get that running back the edge.
And then I'll go with my last loser, and then you can go to your two that we didn't mention yet. My last one's the San Francisco 49ers. Another team that just had a weird draft. They ended up picking a ton of players, kind of similar to how the Rams did, where they didn't start drafting until late, but then they had a bunch. I think the Rams did a much better job, though. I mean, you take Jair Brown, who's kind of a project safety, with your first pick at 87. So they didn't even pick until the third round. You take a kicker at 99, which you better hope that boy is Justin Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, they traded a lot the beginning of last season to get Trey Lance. That didn't work out well.
No. I mean, the 49ers, but again, the 49ers are one of those teams where they'll draft guys in the 4th or 5th round who have nothing to their names, and then they end up being starters for 10 years in the league. So who am I really to judge them?
Yeah.
NFL scouts know more than I do. But again, the reason I put them on there, I only like one of their picks. That's Ronnie Bell, Michigan wide receiver. Play style wise, reminds me of Deebo Samuel, so it kind of makes sense. Super physical, just hard-nosed football player. I think he'll be pretty good at the next level. He'll probably step in and be a rotational guy early in his career, as the 49ers really don't have anybody behind Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who's a star. So he'll probably step in and get some snaps, but other than that, they just started drafting too late, and the guys they got, I don't love any of them. I mean, you draft a kicker in the third round. That's just he's a great kicker. I mean, he made a 59-yarder against TCU, and making a 59-yarder in college is kind of crazy, but I still don't love it.
Yeah, I mean, I like safety out of Penn State, Jair Brown. He San Francisco's defense was already one of the, if not the best in the NFL.
Yep.
And I think adding another piece to that secondary can prove well, especially since that whole secondary was guys like this.
Yeah.
Kind of flew under the radar, and they picked him up.
And, they lost Jimmy Ward to the Texans, so this will help kind of
definitely.
balance that out.
And he's one of those guys that can play that nickel role, especially when you have Hufanga up there at safety.
Hello.
Who had a great year last year.
He had a great year. All pro.
Exploded onto the scene, really. And, he's one of those guys who can run up and hit the running back, hit the quarterback.
He'll run up on you and smell your cologne.
Gus Johnson's in here. But, yeah, that's the only pick I like.
All right, move on to yours. We'll go with the first one in the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oof.
Indeed.
They had needs that they did not address.
I would agree with that in a big way.
Yeah. When I look back at the Jaguars last year, I think their defense was their problem.
Yeah.
And looking at this draft, you would not think so. First 3 picks, all offense, including Reese's least favorite lineman and Anton Harrison.
I mean, he was right about Kenyon Green, so I'm going to trust his expertise here.
Yeah, until Reese misses, I'm not going to question him.
Mm-hmm.
So you take him, Reese's least favorite tackle, so it's got to mean something.
Shout out
Reese is the lineman guy.
He is the lineman.
So that's already a miss for me. And then you go tight end, and not even, one of the guys that I considered to be the top of the line, which they still could have gotten there at 61, and Brenton Strange.
A strange pick, some would say.
A pick I do like is Tank Bigsby, because I think that he is a quite different runner than Travis Etienne. Is he related to John Jacob Jingleheimer Smith? Oh, is that John Michael Schmidt?
His name is my name, too.
Yeah, comments are definitely popping up delayed. But back to Tank Bigsby. I think that can be another double-headed dragon there in the backfield with ETN, being they have such different games and they have, strengths where others have weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So that was a good pick to me, but like I said, it's not one they addressed. I feel like their secondary is their worst part of their game, and they only drafted 2, and they were both safeties.
Yeah. I
like Antonio Johnson out of A&M. I thought he should have went sooner, so that's a good pick to me.
Yeah.
But other than that, they did not address any needs, and I feel like a lot of teams did that this draft.
Yeah, I think overall this draft, we saw a lot of teams have a good draft. Like, there was plenty of teams that had really good drafts. It was kind of hard to pick out the ones where you thought they weren't great, which is, a good sign for the league this year, I guess. But I would agree that in my opinion, the Jags didn't have the best.
Especially with this many picks. Like, yeah, they did get some defensive players, like linebacker out of Florida, Ventrell Miller, DN out of O State, Tyler Lacey. But I think they should have, with the earlier picks, gotten those guys to get a little more talent in those positions than Anton Harrison and Brenton Strange.
I agree. I mean, they picked the pick before the Bengals, and Miles Murphy would have been a great pick for the Jags.
Great pick.
Brian Branch would have been a fantastic pick for the Jags.
Nolan Smith.
I mean, there were tons of guys who I think would have been a bigger impact on this Jags team and fit well. All right, and let's move on to your last loser, the New York Football Jets. 1 year after having the best draft in the league, they kind of had a questionable one this year.
Yeah, and it all starts off with their first round pick in Will McDonald. Some people didn't think he was going to stick to the second round, and I'd have to agree with those people. I just don't see it in him. I mean, granted, who am I to judge? But
Aaron.
Nice. You do have a Yankee fan in the chat.
Listen, gotta pander to the audience.
But yeah, I mean, I get the Will McDonald. I just don't get it in the first round. And other than that, it's that draft, looking at those names, it's just meh. Besides JBC. I don't know. LSU go Tigers, baby.
Junior bacon cheeseburger, baby. Woo.
There's really not much to say about this.
Yeah, no, I mean...
They didn't... I mean, I like the Joe Tippmann pick because they could always use offensive line help.
Offensive line is always a good place to go, especially when you're the Jets, who don't have a great one. But yeah, Will McDonald, weird pick in the first round. It's kind of one of those guys where you're fully banking on potential because he's super athletic, super fast, a little small for the edge in the current NFL, in my opinion. Like it says, he will be dangerous if he's able to consistently get off blocks. But that's a big if, because he's not... I mean, when you're going up against the big old tackles in the NFL, like the Ryan Ramcheks and the Teron Armsteads... I know I'm just using Saints examples, but those are the ones that are off the top of my head. Like, those are big old dudes. So if you can get around those guys, that's one thing. But I don't know. Will McDonald's kind of a project guy, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and then
very Peyton Turner, Marcus Davenport-esque.
Hey, happens to the best of them.
No, it just happens to the Saints and the Jets, apparently.
Apparently so. And then, like you said, Joe Tippmann's a good pick. I would have rather go tackle earlier than center, especially if you're the Jets, who they're not even picking up Mekhi Becton's fifth-year option. You've got George Fant, who's like 38 at the position, so you definitely need some help on the outside of the O-line. I would have went tackle earlier, personally. And then, you pick a running back in the fourth round before you even take any defensive help, which is crazy because they have Breece Hall and Michael Carter. Like, why are you taking a running back? Weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Jets draft was weird.
Not a good look for Aaron Rodgers.
Not a great look for Aaron. He went from one team that doesn't know how to draft, who then figured it out this year. Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Maybe Aaron Rodgers doesn't know how to draft. Okay, moving on from NFL, let's go to the New Orleans Saints. And let's talk about the Saints. Let's break down every pick that we made, how we feel about each one, and how we feel overall. So, first of all, looking at all the picks, what grade would you give the Saints? And then we can go into a further breakdown.
So NFL gave us a B plus. I feel like we're right in that area because a lot of the picks, a lot of people thought were questionable, which is a very Saints thing to do.
Yeah.
But as I study the players a little more, I'd give us an A. I think I wouldn't go like A plus, but A minus.
I think A minus is kind of that perfect spot for me too. So going through every pick, Brian Brzee in the first. I was very against it, as you can go back and hear on our draft watch along. So go ahead, watch that again. That was 5 hours of quality content.
Yeah. I was against it at first too, but only because Nolan Smith was still on the board.
And like I was so caught up in the moment that I wasn't being true. Nolan Smith did not fit the Saints. He's kind of that same thing like we just talked about with Will McDonald, where he's more athletic and has the potential than actual production. I think he was really good when he was healthy, but he barely played this past season. And you're betting more on kind of that upside, which hasn't always worked well for the Saints. You're kind of doing that with Brian Brzee too, though. Tore his ACL in 2021, had 2 injuries in his shoulder and his kidneys this past season, as well as the death of his sister, so he was out. Of course,
he's been put
can't
through the
blame him
ringer
for that. Yeah, I mean he's had a tough time. So,
but from when he has played, I've seen a lot of production.
Yeah, his freshman year he was fantastic. I mean, after his freshman year, if you're allowed to go into the draft after your freshman year, he probably would have went like top 10, just because he was that dominant. But it's growing on me, and not only that, but something that fits with this pick as well as basically everything I think we did. We drafted for need. We needed a D tackle, one who could rush the passer and cause havoc, and Brian Brzee will do that. Next player, Isaiah Foskey, Notre Dame.
My favorite pick.
All right. Take the floor. I'd love to know why.
So Foskey, I didn't really look at him much, and then like as the draft got closer and closer, I started to look at the round 2 and round 3 prospects a little more. When I came across him, that's the point when I realized he was the all-time Notre Dame leading sack leader, passed up Justin Tuck. And so that got me, even more curious.
That's a name right there.
Got me even more curious and started watching film more and more. And I came up with the comp of, a lot of people were comparing him to like Marcus Davenport. And I didn't see it really at all. He's one of the smaller guys, but he's got the strength to beat some of these tackles. Not only that, he has the speed. Smaller guy, has enough speed to get around the edge.
He's not even small, though. He's like 6'5", 260. Like, he's a big old guy. Yeah. Like, okay, he's not big, but he's like what you want in a D end. Maybe he doesn't weigh as much, I guess. But, he's 6'5", he's 265. I mean, he's got a good frame to be a really effective edge rusher.
Yeah, and when I watched him play a little bit, I started thinking of like, the TJ Watts who have that speed and that strength, but don't really have, the pounds that would require that much strength. So I compared him to like TJ Watt or Melvin Ingram. Yeah,
Melvin Ingram was the name that you brought up, and I really liked that. I was saying Jadeveon Clowney when I watched him, because you look at him and you're like, yeah, that dude plays football. And not only that, but he's a big disruptor. Even when he's not getting the sack production, which he obviously did. But even when he's not, he's still causing havoc. He's still stopping the run. He's putting pressure on the quarterback. He's making him step up in the pocket, put him into bad situations, hurry up on the throws, knock him down after the ball's out. He's really good at playing. He's really good at playing edge. I mean, he just is.
And he's one of those guys, from what I've seen, that they have that high motor, but they also have that football IQ.
Yeah,
like I've seen a couple plays where he caused a fumble. And instead of going to pick up the ball immediately, he saw one of his other players were going to pick up the ball, and he immediately started blocking.
Yeah, super smart guy. And my favorite thing about him is his character. They came out with a story that said, legit 30 minutes after he gets drafted to the Saints, he goes to the hospital to support his friends whose grandpa was on life support. I mean, you just got drafted to the NFL 30 minutes ago. You can be celebrating and doing whatever you want to do, and you're at a hospital with your friend whose family is going through such a tough time. So to me, that immediately speaks to the character of the guy. You're getting a guy who's not only good on the football field, but going to be good in the locker room and good, just a good all-around person.
Good in the community, which a lot of Saints are.
Yeah, and I love adding that to our team, both on and off the field. TCU running back Kendre Miller. He wasn't like one of the guys who I was like super infatuated with from the running back position. And I loved, like, running back's my favorite position to watch going into the draft. He wasn't one of the guys I watched a lot, just because I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't. I should have, because once I started watching him after we picked him, it's my favorite pick. So Isaiah Foskey was your favorite pick. Kendre Miller's my favorite pick. I watched him, and every time I watched him, all I thought about was a balance between Alvin Kamara and Le'Veon Bell. From the running perspective, Le'Veon Bell, because he's super patient, waits for his blocks, and has amazing ball carrier vision to where he's going to wait for a hole to open up before he tries to explode.
Yeah, he's
but
not
once he
force his
does,
way through.
But once he does explode, he's gone. He doesn't have like run away from the cop speed, as Gus Johnson would say. Big Gus Johnson episode. But
they all need to be
he's
like
going. He's going to explode. He's going to take that burst, and he's going to get you some yards. He always falls forward. He's never a guy who's going to Reggie Bush it and run backwards and try to lose yards for you. He's always going to go forward.
Get speared mid-catch on a screen.
By Brian Dawkins, nonetheless. He's going to fight for yards. He's going to fall forward. And, you know, I think his average yard per carry in college was like 6.7. Like, if you can hand the ball off to the guy and you're guaranteed 7 yards almost, run the ball down the other team's throat. But from the running perspective, I liked Le'Veon Bell. From the balance and yards after the catch perspective, I really liked Alvin Kamara. Got a good balance, very shifty, can juke out guys, will fight through contact, something that we see Alvin Kamara do all the time. Very crafty out in space.
Yeah, I definitely see that too. He just like Alvin Kamara in the sense where, you know, he doesn't have the size to be, you know, staying on his feet through all these hits. He just has the balance. He has the athleticism to know how to get hit and stay up.
And then my last point about Kendre Miller before we move on, he's only 20 years old. He was in the NFL draft. He's proven in college, had 2 seasons over 1,000 yards, and was on the national championship runner-up team in TCU this past season. And he's produced every year he's been in college, and he's not even 21 yet. So he's got a long career ahead of him, and I think he came into a perfect situation.
Agreed.
Next pick, I think we both agree this is our least favorite pick.
This is really the only one that I don't like. And it's mainly because we traded up.
And we only traded up 6 spots, but he would have been there.
Yeah, I thought when we traded up we were going to get Keely
Ringo, yeah. I thought for sure we were grabbing a corner there, but we ended up trading up, get Old Dominion offensive lineman Nick Saldiveri. I'm pretty sure that's how you say his name. He played tackle at Old Dominion. He played guard at Old Dominion, and he even took snaps at center in the Senior Bowl. So he's proven to be able to play all 5 positions at some effectiveness.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing to have on your bench. So that's why I'm like kind of, you know, liking the pick more and more now that I think about it, because he can, you know, great guy to have on your bench because he could step into any role in that offensive line and get you the help that you need when one of your starters goes down. I just don't like the fact that we traded up to get him.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like Calvin Throckmorton, where he's a good swing tackle or will fill in at guard if somebody gets hurt, which we know Andres Pete's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And Cesar Ruiz got his 5th-year option declined, so he might be out of here after this season. So maybe he's kind of one of those, sit him for a year, let him learn, let him get his technique right, and he'll fill in at guard for you next year due to, you know, he's kind of got smaller arms, not really sustainable at tackle in the NFL. So maybe he'll be good in a couple years, and maybe he'll be able to fill in as an injury guy. But for me, it just wasn't my favorite pick that we made. Moving on, this is kind of just like a pick that makes sense from so many perspectives. Jake Haener, quarterback out of Fresno State. As you know, our current quarterback, Derek Carr, also Fresno State. Jake Haener was a Saints fan growing up. Picture went around of him wearing a Reggie Bush jersey to school when he was like in middle school. And then he said he wore number 9 because of Drew Brees. He wore it in high school and college because of Drew Brees. very similar size to Drew Brees. Said he's watched film with Drew Brees before, and said immediately when he was drafted had a 45-minute phone call with Derek Carr. So he's got connections. It makes sense.
Yeah, the chemistry's going to be there.
The chemistry's going to be there. He wanted to be a New Orleans Saint. Apparently, we wanted him to be a New Orleans Saint as well. And a lot of people were saying, like, this was the most underrated pick of the entire draft. Like, a lot of national stuff was saying Jake Haener to the Saints is a great pick because not only does he have all this weird New Orleans connection somehow, but he's a really good football player. Similar in size and athleticism to Drew Brees. Hopefully, he has a bigger arm than Brees did at the end of his career. I need to kind of watch more of him. I kind of just read what everybody else was saying because I didn't watch much of him. But I think it's a great pick. You can't, with what the Saints have been through the past 3 years as far as quarterbacks goes, you can't have too many on the roster at this point. So, we'll have Derek Carr and Jameis Winston as our 1-2, and then Jake Haener can take some time and learn. He won't be thrown into the fire like Ian Book was, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because Ian Book wasn't a good quarterback coming out of college. Jake Haener is legitimately a good quarterback coming out of college.
Yeah, I think he was kind of overshadowed by all these quarterbacks coming into the draft.
Yeah, like I said earlier with the Hendon Hooker thing, if you don't have Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, Hendon Hooker, Anthony Richardson with so much potential, Jake Haener's kind of one of those safe picks where it's like he's probably going to be a solid backup and will come in and start a few games here and there, similar to maybe like a Gardner Minshew.
You'd love
Matt
that.
Flynn. Oh, I love Gardner Minshew. He's not Gardner Minshew. I wish he was legit him, but if he can be that role where he'll just fill in if you need him to, he can win you some games like a Teddy Bridgewater at this point in his career, Jacoby Brissett, fill that kind of role. Can't complain about that. I don't know much about Jordan Howden either, so I'm just going to assume it was a good pick. We need some depth at safety. At safety now, we have plenty of depth. We've got Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu as our starters. We've got Jonathan Abram, who we picked up over the offseason. And then can't forget that Smoke Monday's coming back. He was injured last year, has the greatest name in football, and he will be a New Orleans Saint. And then very close to Kendre Miller with my favorite pick in the draft. We traded Adam Troutman to get here and picked up Wake Forest wide receiver A.T. Perry. I heard somebody compare him to Michael Thomas as far as like play style goes and build goes, and I was like, sure, I'll take. What's better than one Michael Thomas? A healthy Michael Thomas. And if A.T. Perry can even be half of what Michael Thomas was in 2019, he will be a fantastic player for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I definitely see the comparison when I watch some of his highlights. But I feel like he's Michael Thomas, but with speed.
Yeah, he's got speed, he's got size, he's got athleticism, he can run routes.
He's got the build of a great wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, he is built like the wide receiver that you want. He just didn't have a ton of production because he went to Wake Forest. So I think...
I mean, we've seen it before, like Arkansas Pine Bluff. Who's going to draft a tackle out of Arkansas Pine Bluff?
The Saints. They'll do it once, and then they'll pick up an undrafted free agent tackle out of Arkansas Pine Bluff, too. And it'll work both times. But yeah, overall, like we said, I would give the Saints right around that A- grade. I think a B+ isn't too far off. I'd like it to be a little bit higher, but I guess
we're a little biased.
I guess they didn't like Brian Brzee as much. We are a little biased, so I'd kick it up to an A-. An A if you're feeling frisky, or if you're feeling Foskey. But
ooh. First we have Passion Zone. Now we have Feeling Foskey.
Feeling Foskey might be a shirt we make if Isaiah Foskey has a really good rookie year. I said it first. It's on camera.
OTD.
Also,
Feeling Foskey.
I love that. Also, go back and watch the February 2nd episode of Off the Dome where we gave 3 players to look for the Saints in the first round. And Isaiah Foskey was one of the guys I mentioned. You can go back and check the tape. I saw that on our scripts here, and it blew my mind. I did not remember talking about him, but I talked about the Saints targeting him in the first round all those months ago. So I'm kind of like Nostradamus, I guess.
Mother Teresa Caputo.
Don't talk about poo in this podcast. This is sports, man. God, this guy can't take him anywhere. Can't even take him home.
No, but definitely the 3 guys we picked, none of them hit.
I don't remember who we said, other than Isaiah Foskey. I also had the Saints trading up for C.J. Stroud.
I think I had I had Anaduke Uzama in the first.
He went to the Chiefs.
Went to the Chiefs.
Which that got a big pop because he's Kansas State's all-time leading sack leader, and Kansas State's right down the road from Kansas City, of course.
And then I had
I agree.
It was O-lineman. Oh, it was Avila
Steve Avila
in the second, and then
ended
Charbonnet.
up going to the Rams, and then Charbonnet, as we already talked about, went to the Seahawks. So yeah, overall Saints pretty good draft, A- level. I don't know if they'll reach that 2017 level draft like we talked about, but I think what we did is we filled what roles we needed with players who fit the role that we had open for them, and I'm really excited. This draft made me a lot more excited for the Saints season than I was before. And I guess that's all you can ask for out of a draft as a fan. So overall,
especially in this division, because it is wide open.
It is wide open. I think three out of the 4 teams could win it, and I wouldn't be that shocked.
Yeah, I think I'd consider the Panthers the front runner right now, just because of the amount of talent they acquired.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
All the changes they made, there's really no telling what they're gonna do.
The Panthers could legitimately fall anywhere between 11 wins and 6 wins, and you can't blame them either way. The Saints, I think, have a higher floor than the Panthers, in my opinion, but the Panthers have a higher ceiling. So we'll see how it plays out once the season gets started, but I'm really excited to watch this year. The divisional game should be fun because we're all kind of like mid-level teams, except for the Buccaneers. They kind of like actually stink.
Yeah.
But the Falcons have a lot of potential. The Panthers have a lot of potential. We have a lot of potential. We'll see how it goes. But overall thoughts on the draft, I think we both agree that a lot of teams did well.
There was a lot of teams.
Got
better. It was hard for me to pick 3 losers.
A lot of teams got better, and I think.
Yeah, and that's all you really need to ask of the
And
draft.
again, we can't say that for sure because by golly, we're still 5 months away from football, 4 months away from football, so we can't judge it yet. But first impressions, that's how we feel. Anything else out there to send to the OTD fans out there before we sign on out?
I'm just ready for football to start and to draft the School of Mullets teams.
Ooh, good point. That's going to be fun. Reese is already trying to make our big board. Who did he... Dude, I forgot who he said, but he had some defensive player. He was like, yeah, we got to add him to our draft board because he's playing running back too. I was like, shut up, Reese.
Myles Gaskin.
You disgust me too. But yeah, I'm super excited for football. The draft always makes me get that itch, ready for it to be back, and it's only been gone for a couple months. I went back yesterday and rewatched the 2019 LSU versus Alabama game, just because of the amount of talent that was on the field. Like, it was legit 2 starting NFL offenses going against each other in a college game. You can't ask for much more there. And then on defense, you had basically 2 starting NFL defenses too. So I went back and watched that game. It made me even more hungry for football, so I'm really excited. We'll see how, OTAs, training camp goes, get into preseason, and then it'll be full go once we get to the end of August, early September. So football is exciting. OTD is exciting. Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching tonight. Don't forget you can always go back and watch any of our episodes on YouTube or Twitch, Off the Dome Sports Podcast, or on Twitch at OTD Sports. Follow us on Facebook, Off the Dome Sports Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at @off_the_dome pod. If you ever want to talk to us, let us know what's going on, have any suggestions for us, anything like that, you can either message us on Facebook or email us offthedomesportspod@gmail.com. But until next time, this has been OTD with Redfish
and Mustang.
We are the boys on Brightside, and we will see you next time.